Welcome back, Hononegah, Algebra 1. Today we're going to do section 2.5. It's an exploration. Obviously, if you're in class, we would do a little bit of a partner activity here, but I'll be your partner. So I'm looking at the first graph. I see an open circle at -5. It is shaded between and then a closed circle at 4. And what that is, basically, it's an and situation. It's between two values. So your x in this problem is both less than or equal to 4, but also greater than, not equal to because it's an open circle, -5. So x is both greater than -5 and less than -4, less than or equal to 4. So it's between -5 and 4. Now the next one, it goes in two separate directions. So over here you got x is less than -5, and over here you have x is greater than or equal to 4. And so instead of having a between or an and situation, you now have an or. So the x values are less than -5, or the x values are greater than or equal to 4. So as we talk about section 2.5, and again, we're going to talk about what's known as compound inequalities, or inequalities that have two statements in the same question. So the compound inequality is the inequality formed by joining two inequalities, such as using the word and or. The graph of an and is the intersection of graphs. A lot of times what I say is between. So if I have an and situation, I'm going to be between x. If I graphed both of these on the same graph, less than 5 would go this way, and greater than 2 would go this way. And so what you're talking about is x is less than 5 and greater than 2, so between. I don't usually put the word and in. That does not make it wrong. Okay, so x can be greater than or equal to 2 and x is less than 5. Or, again, or is basically the union. You're basically having two graphs on the same graph. So you're talking about having less than or equal to -2 or greater than 1. These are graphs that are going in opposite directions. Write each sentence as the inequality and then graph the inequality. The number x is greater than -8. So x is greater than -8, and x is less than or equal to 4. So what would that graph look like? Well, here's -8, here's +4. I want an open circle at -8 going greater, and a closed circle at 4 going less. So again, the intersection of the two, which basically means between. The number y is at most, remember the word is at most, so less than or equal to 0, or y is at least, so greater than or equal to 2. So what would the graph look like? You're talking about +2, closed circle, shaded greater, 0, closed circle, shaded less. Try the next one by yourself. Here we go. D is more than 0. So D is more than 0, and D is less than 10. So remember, this is an and situation, so D has to be less than 10 and greater than 0. So here's 0, here's 10, greater than 0, less than 10. This is what a compound inequality looks like for an and. Notice that in the middle is the actual problem. So where it says x minus 2, if I covered up this side, you would solve that to the right. If I covered up the other side, you would solve it to the right, to the left. So again, this is a situation where you're going to solve both of these at the same time. If I want to solve the middle, I would add 2. But instead of adding 2 to both sides, you're actually going to add 2 to the entire problem. So you're going to add 2 to the left. You're going to add 2 to the middle, which gets rid of it. And then you're going to add 2 to the right. And so the graph of the compound inequality is less than 5 and greater than -2. And again, I like to refer to this as in between. So how would I solve the middle? If I was looking at the middle, I would subtract 1. But instead of subtracting 1 to all sides, or to both sides, you're going to subtract 1 from all areas. So the left, the middle, and the right. Now, this gets us to another topic that ultimately we learned earlier in the chapter. I'm going to divide by a negative. Dividing by a negative or multiplying by a negative is a red flag. All the symbols must switch. So now notice that everything is going in the opposite direction. That doesn't mean the graph is that way. -4 is still the smallest value. 2 is still the largest value. So I want x to be bigger than -4 and smaller than 2. And notice the 2 has an open circle. So how do I solve the middle? That's what you got to ask yourself. Well, I would add 1. So if I'm going to add 1 to the middle, I'm going to add 1 to everything. I'm going to divide by -2. Now, just like previously, all the symbols have to change. So everything is going in the opposite direction. -3 is the smallest value. So I have a closed circle at -3 because there's an equal to, open circle at +1, and shaded in between. Hit pause for a second. Try the next one by yourself. And welcome back. I'm going to add 5 to everything and divide by 2. Notice that I did not change the inequality symbol because I divided by a +2. So the graph, 1, 6, open circles for both, and shaded in between. So and is much more complicated actually than or. If you have an or situation, you literally are solving these separate. The or is merely going to be in the answer. So I'm going to add 5. I'm going to solve this just like I did earlier in the chapter. Divide by 3 and get y to be less than -1. Solve the other one. I'm going to add 1. Divide by 2. And y is greater than 3. So in an or situation, they are separated. -1, open circle, shaded below. +3, open circle, shaded above. So if you see an or in your question, you literally are going to have an or in your answer. Just solve the one on the left and solve the one on the right separately. So I'm going to subtract 3, divide by a -2. Anytime you divide by a negative, you have to change the inequality symbol. And so the graph will be separated. I've got -4, open circle, shaded below, +2, closed circle, shaded above. Try the next one by yourself, see what you get. Hit pause. And welcome back. So I've got an or. So I'm going to subtract 3 and divide by 4. I'm going to add 8. And so now the graph would be less than or equal to -2, greater than, so that's an open circle, +7. Word problem. Electronic devices should operate effectively when the specified temperature range. Outside that range, the device may fail. So some of you may have had an iPhone before and put it out in the sun and it'll automatically shut down when it gets too hot. So now I'm going to solve this. I'm going to distribute. So 5/9 minus 169. So again, this isn't a very friendly situation. I'm going to add 169. So I've got 169, 5/9 F, and then 35 plus 169 is 475 ninths. So now I'm going to multiply everything by 9. Things get a lot better now. So that gets 160, 5F, 475. divide everything by 5, and I get, sorry, 32 and 95. So think about your phone right now. As your phone will operate normally as long as it's between 32 degrees and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Write a compound inequality that represents the graph. So here's x. It's smaller than -1 and greater than -4, and it's greater than or equal to because there's a closed circle. What does the phrase at most mean? I'm going to tell you right now, this is probably on your test, may even be on your final exam at the end of the year. At most is a less than or equal to, because again, if I said I have at most $10 in my wallet, then the most I can have is 10. So again, less than or equal to. Remember, your homework assignment is at the front. Good luck. If you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher.